And we are live.
And we're going to show open people for
All right. We are live. All right. So, welcome everyone, both that are sitting in here and those who are tuning in online, if there is somebody there. We are here for the Capstone presentation for the August Iceland Green Program Group. And over the last week, this amazing group has been introduced to renewable energy sources in Iceland, as well as sustainability, alongside working on their Capstone projects. And for those who don't know what the Capstone projects are, it's essentially just like an entrepreneurial solution to any real-world problems in sustainable development. And here, no idea is too big or crazy. And we have kind of encouraged all the groups to kind of go outside the box and be creative. And in my opinion, you've all done that. So I'm super excited to see what you have to bring today. We have 3 groups presenting, and each of them consists of people, like 4 to 6 people. And you will all have like 15 minutes to present. And then I will give you like a 5, then 3, then 1 minute warning before your time runs out. And then after each of the group, we will have like 5 to 10 minutes for questioning. So I encourage all of you, of course, and those who are maybe tuning in online to ask questions. Sounds good. All right, let's welcome the first group up to the stage, which is the Plastic Fantastic. Woohoo! Ready?
Hi, we are Plastic Fantastic, and for our capstone we looked at integrating sustainable packaging into Icelandic communities.
My name is Mitchell. I'm from the United States and I'm studying sustainability and business.
My name's Lauren. I'm from the UK and I'm doing chemical and environmental engineering.
My name's Anissa. I'm from Canada and I study civil engineering and sustainability.
My name is Juan. I'm from El Salvador and I'm studying biochemistry.
So as you could see, we were all from different places, and when we first started talking about what we could do for our capstone, we realized that recycling sucks everywhere, and we wanted to see if we could implement that into an Icelandic community. So starting with our what, it was to implement the integration of environmentally sustainable packaging materials within the community as an environmental consulting firm. We wanted to do this to look at sustainable packaging options for Iceland in their city center and by looking at different materials. And we wanted to do this to reduce plastic pollutions caused by consumerism, increase environmental stewardship, lower carbon emissions, and contribute to a local circular economy.
So before we get into the details of our solution, I think it's important to have a simple introduction to our topic, which is mushroom-based plastics and seaweed-based plastics. So these are really environmentally friendly, and considering they don't use any fossil fuels like traditional plastics, it would be a great way to start shifting away from those carbon emissions. And they can be used to package fresh food like fruits and vegetables in grocery stores, and that way the produce can stay fresh and then the packaging can be recycled or composted afterwards. Seaweed is commonly used as like a plastic film substitute, so that's good for keeping the food fresh as well.
So the environmental impact of the mushroom-based packaging specifically is huge, and it covers a really wide scope. So it's ocean safe, plastic free, it has no chemicals as it's grown naturally. It's also flame resistant and can be composted at home. It's scalable to a really small, unique style up to something a bit larger, and it's also water resistant and can make a custom design. In terms of its relevance to the Sustainable Development Goals, it's obviously an innovative product within Iceland. We don't believe it's here yet. It contributes to sustainable cities and communities and also contributes to responsible consumption.
So for our key resources, our first part that we wanted to consider was the funding. And we wanted to look at grants and private investors instead of making the community pay for it, because that would show more of a positive incentive to use it. And then partnering with expert companies. There's a lot of mushroom-based packaging in the States specifically, so being able to bring it here, looking at the climate and how it would change when we introduce it, as well as partnerships with existing companies here, such as grocery stores and retail companies, and being able to work with all three of these parts to integrate it together, we thought was super important. Also looking at the key activities, consulting with local mushroom farms to introduce the lab for the process, as well as using the imported seaweed, and then creating educational and awareness campaigns. For example, the tomato farm introduced PLA cups, which were compostable, but it didn't take off because it looked too alike to the plastic that was already being used. So people were still putting it in the plastic, so being able to create infographics and the communication was also very important.
So the process for making the mushroom packaging is kind of in three main stages. So the first is the design and moulding. So you make the design using a 3D CAD model, and this is then uploaded to a machine which will route a positive mould. So this serves as the form around which the mushroom packaging is shaped. The mould is then used in a process called thermoforming, so it heats a plastic layer and that's then vacuum formed over the mould for precise shaping. So obviously there is a bit of plastic use here, but it's a one-time use to make one mould which is then used multiple times. So it is reusable, therefore is still reducing waste and improving efficiency. The actual packaging itself is made by blending hemp hurd with mycelium spores, and it's placed in a growth chamber for 4 to 6 days until fully colonised, and then dried for 1 further day to prevent any more growth after it's formed. After this and all the quality checks, it's then ready to be used as packaging. At the end of life, it's fully biodegradable and compostable, and if any packaging isn't used or returned, it can be recycled by grinding it down and reintroducing it into the growth process. So this further reduces waste and contributes to a circular economy. In terms of the seaweed production process, it of course starts with harvesting seaweed from coastal areas. It then goes through a similar processing using drying, grinding and extraction, and then forming through extrusion, moulding and film casting, and it's then done after the quality checks. Its qualities are that it's biodegradable, so it breaks down naturally into harmless substances which reduces pollution and waste. It's renewable, so of course it's a sustainably cultivated resource, and it has great barrier properties, so it helps maintain freshness of food items.
The value so the value proposition for our project is basically in focusing on sustainability, how we are able to produce this biodegradable packaging system instead of using traditional plastic, and thus lowering our carbon emission exposition. We also, using this technology, we implement the innovation and development of the technologies we use for plastic packaging systems. So this high-performance packaging and cutting edge technology allows us to make the plastic synthesis more biodegradable and therefore accessible to switch instead of all traditional plastics. We support local economy as well by introducing this innovation and this approach of plastic to the local communities here in Iceland and providing them with the availability of changing to this more eco-friendly option. So more marketing channels for this will be mostly directed based in 3 main aspects. First, we have direct sales, retail and institutional partnerships, and also educational and awareness campaigns. So first, the direct sales, we will focus more as like business to business. Like we can offer you this system. We have the accessibility to reach your stores and everything with the alternative of reducing plastic and being able to have products or bulk orders, contracts as well. With the retail and institutional partnerships, we are able to reach those grocery stores and those centers in which we can involve and engage with the local communities in here, as well as creating educational and awareness campaigns, which will vary like from regional marketing, workshops, and webinars to inform the population that this solution is available, and we are able to reach a more wider range of people that could get involved into these actions. Thank you. So we are building strong relationships in renewable packaging of plastic. So we want to focus more on how we are being able to create a community in which the alternative of reducing and not using plastic anymore is an option. So it's important to us to make sure that there is an alternative for this type of problem in Iceland, and this option is available for the recycling of plastic here.
Going into the segments on who it would benefit, we thought of a lot of different stakeholders, one being the environment, because we're not putting more plastic in, we're going to make it compostable and plant-based. The mushroom farmers, because they can add this lab into their farms and benefit the community, as well as the mushroom packaging companies and bringing their items and innovation overseas and seeing how it can help with different weather changes and how long it would last and things like that. For our customers and who would be paying, once again, we want to use grants and private investors and maybe possibly the mushroom packaging companies as an incentive to kind of get their product internationalized. They could help pay for it.
So we'll have a few big costs when starting this business, and one of the main ones is funding the ad campaign to let people know about what we're doing, because it takes a lot for people to actually care and to get their attention. So we'll need to really focus in on how to promote it, whether that's social media or bus stops or whatever method we end up choosing. We also need to connect Icelandic farmers to the companies in the United States to connect them and hopefully influence the farmers' decisions with how they want to produce their mushrooms and the kind of things they can go forward with. A few overhead costs would just be transportation and distribution of the products the farmers produce, because we don't want them to have that burden, so we'll take care of that by bringing it to grocery stores and markets for the product to be in stores. When we are profitable, we plan to expand the business and how many farmers are a part of the program. This way we can continue moving away from traditional plastics and focus more on renewable solutions. We have a 5-year revenue breakdown, and it's expected that year 1 will have
That went so fast.
Year 1, it will mostly be consulting fees when we talk to farmers, and a few sponsorships from the funding and grants we get, and then very little actual sales, only about 5%. And then our year 5 is extremely optimistic and unlikely, but we would want 80% in sales and only 20% consulting. So we're still taking in new farmers, but hopefully by that time, most of them have already transitioned into our program, so there won't be many left. And hopefully we're self-sustainable, so we have no need for sponsorships, grants, and outside funding. Thanks for watching.
All right. Any questions from you guys? Yep. Isaac?
Are there any limitations on what food can be used for mushroom packaging?
So the question was, just to reply it for the mic, are there any limitations of what food can be
Used for mushroom packaging?
used for mushroom packaging?
In a way, yeah, because there's limitations in the shapes you can grow. So there's things such as the angle can't be too far, so anything too wide like that will have structural problems at the sides. And it also at the moment has problems in size. It's kind of this kind of size of packaging, so you couldn't do anything huge, which is why we chose something like food. Say 4 apples would fit, but huge scale maybe wouldn't work the same way.
Very nice. Yolanda?
Is your company exploring and will be using local mushroom or local seaweed, or is it all imported?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is that in Iceland, mushrooms can grow year-round. So any farmer that wants to join the program will grow their own mushrooms. They'll need to get the infrastructure in place, but then we would be importing the seaweed and then helping manufacture that part of the packaging. Sora?
Since you plan on importing the seaweed, when it comes to importing, things like that contributes a lot to greenhouse gas emissions and everything with like ships. So how do you plan on counteracting that?
Hopefully the reduction in plastic is extreme, because the costs we have right now is extreme, and in any business it's going to be hard to be completely carbon negative or zero. So hopefully that will more than offset it, and we will be better than carbon neutral.
All right. So I have a question from Jake, and then I have a question from myself. Let's start with Jake. So he said this is a good project with a great impact. I have a few questions. How long does it take to produce these packages compared to any traditional plastic packaging?
I think with the 6 days plus 1 day to grow, the lead time is probably slightly longer. But when you pick a country like Iceland that doesn't have the market to like cater for the same way the US does, we've kind of gone for a smaller market and more personalized, and then see how it scales up.
Yeah, exactly. He adds here, like Iceland is a small market. I believe the product would do well here if prices are managed well. And from myself, I was just wondering, like, why would you think Iceland is a good place for this type of product? Especially, like, because now you said you might want to import the seaweed, but we have plenty of seaweed here in Iceland. So could that possibly be used as well instead of importing? Do you know if there's any specific type of seaweed needed for this?
I think down the road we could definitely look into using other seaweeds,
Yeah.
but we chose Iceland because it is very positive around renewable and sustainability ideas.
Yeah.
So we think that would be a good place to test the market, I guess, and then expand anywhere else that we think we can.
I agree. Any more questions from you guys? This was awesome. Thank you so much. How amazing. All right, so thank you, Team Plastic Fantastic. I'm gonna invite the next group up to the stage, which is the Waste Warriors. So go ahead.
Oh, there's a mic here. I didn't even see that.
Do we stop?
Yep.
Okay, hello everyone. We are the Waste Warriors Incorporated, and this will be our capstone about reducing food waste. Just to start, we're going to introduce ourselves. I'm Isaac. I'm a chemistry major. I studied at SDSU in the States. I'm in the green program because as a kid I went camping a lot, and I kind of gave me an appreciation for nature, so I'm very interested in sustainability, keeping it the way it is.
And I'm David. I also study at SDSU. I'm an environmental science major. Joined the green program because I love sustainability and looking into renewable energy sources and repurposing our food waste.
My name is Devin, and I am also too a SDSU student, and my major is environmental sciences as well. And I joined the green program as well because I love camping and I like wildlife and plants and animals on the planet. And sooner or later, I'd like to do some research and talk about plants and animals on our planet.
I'm Sora. I'm the outlier, study at Penn State. I'm a double major of biochemistry and philosophy, and I joined the green program just because mainly I'm colorblind, so I see the world as like half dead the entire time, so like I want to be able to protect it so nobody has to kind of see what I see every day of my life. But then I also just enjoy, you know, being in the environment and outdoors and just kind of working towards protecting it.
Okay, just to start, this is kind of a general outline of what we'll be going over. I'm just going to start with the golden circle. It's the basics of our idea. Go into sustainability complex, the kind of groups that we're going to be targeting, sustainable development goals from the UN, and then we're going to go over the basics of composting and biofuel because they're essential aspects of our company, theoretically. And then we're going to finish off with business model canvas outline and some potential expansion for the company. To start off is the golden circle. So the reason that we wanted to create a company around food waste was because food waste creates a lot of greenhouse gas emission in its decomposition and in a lot of landfills burnt. So if it's food waste that can be used for something else and it's burnt, that's just literally greenhouse gas emissions. And also, reducing food waste is a way to preserve the resources that we've already had and already made. The way we plan to do this is to utilize specifically crop waste and urban food waste to create compost, and additionally, restaurant food waste for biofuel, because a lot of vegetable oils can be used to produce biofuel. And then the secondary goal is to improve the unsold food system, like how a lot of supermarkets cannot sell food, so they're stowed away. And then the way that we're planning to tackle both of these is to create a nonprofit waste management company centered around collecting and processing food and crop waste. So in terms of the communities we're focusing on, with our sustainability complex, we kind of theorized this as a San Diego company, just to give it like a location, but this could be anywhere, really. And the first step for this would be the household, because obviously for the urban food waste, each household has to actually be willing to put their compost in a bin. And then we kind of want to move to the community, like have a whole community doing that, so we can collect the whole community's urban food waste, including like restaurants and farmers in the community. And then step 3 would be the city. This is kind of our main goal, like all of San Diego, all of the farms, all of the restaurants, all of the urban areas. And then step 4 is kind of cut off, but it's just up and above, whole counties, provinces.
So for sustainable development goals, sustainable development goals are just kind of a brief overview of goals that are oriented towards improving the welfare of everyone everywhere in a community. So Waste Warriors Incorporated actively works towards implementing practices and policies and ethics that support Sustainable Development Goals 7, 8, 11, 12, and 13. And they're all just listed there for their proper titles. So specifically for clean energy, the biofuel is our main player in this rule. It just helps, since it's a renewable energy source, it keeps it clean energy and also affordable, since it's roughly $30.88 per gallon when you're using it. And for Sustainable Development Goal 8, since we're using decent work and we're creating our own waste company, it creates jobs for anyone in the local community and helps support the stability of the economy within the local area. For sustainable communities, we're just advocating towards composting and reducing the food waste found in landfills, which also then reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And it's been linked towards, if you reduce your greenhouse gas emissions, you can have better mental health, physical health effects. So it just helps create a more happy and widely habitable community. Responsible consumption, we're just ensuring that any product purchased from a consumer will be properly reused, especially with food waste, and just turning it into proper compost and the biofuel. And then climate action, reducing our emissions from wasted food. Once again, our biofuel is the main player here.
So really quick, just talking about what composting is. Composting is a process where you take organic materials called feedstocks, you put it in a bin, and these feedstocks, they're divided into 2 categories listed here. It's brown, which is your carbon sources, and green, which is your nitrogen sources. So ideally, you have a 3-to-1 ratio of the 2. Additionally, you'll have optimum oxygen, moisture, and temperature. And if you have all 4 of these things, compost. And what composting is microbes breaking down these materials and creating a crumbly earthen material, which is great for fertilizing and growing crops. So this is environmentally friendly primarily because it reduces trash sent to the landfill, but in a secondary way, compost is used to grow plants, plants photosynthesize, reduces emissions.
So just an overview of what biofuel is and kind of its whole impact on the environment is just biofuel is any fuel derived immediately from any living matter. So common substances that are used and what we are looking for to accept from mostly restaurants, as we previously mentioned, is just vegetable oils, grease, used cooking oils, or any animal fats. And then it can be used in the transportation fuel industry, so for cars and anything like that. And there are minimal heating and electricity uses. It's kind of unseen currently. So we're hoping to expand into that as well more. And then the process towards making it is just basically fermentation of crops or whatever we end up gathering, such as the vegetable oils, into ethanol, and then you harvest that ethanol and turn it into fuel essentially. And then reasons against using biofuel is it can cause large land use changes, which affects biodiversity of local areas. It has a potential increase in greenhouse gas emissions while also decreasing them, so it's kind of 50-50 sometimes. And then there's a lot of pressure that's placed on water resources and the potential air and water pollution. But then there's also a great amount of reasons in favor of biofuel. So one of them is just overall reducing the effects of fossil fuel production and use, because in the long run, the costs of like making the increased greenhouse gas emissions are outweighed by using the sustainable resource for renewable fuel. It's increased farming income due to farmers donating any crop waste that they may have to be helping make the biofuel. It's a renewable resource, as mentioned. You can do localized production, so in our case, like we said, we're based in San Diego. It allows for further innovation in the fuel and transportation industries because although current engines for almost any car can support the use of biofuel, you can still enhance them to get more sustainable efforts out of it.
Next, we're going to talk about our business model and the outline of what we're going to be doing. So who is Waste Warriors? So we're a type of sustainable waste company that we're going to be focusing on renewing food waste into more usable products. And our key resources, of course, are going to be those participating households and businesses because we're looking for donations of those food waste to then further our business. And we also need some finances in order to transport the waste to our facilities and then process it then. The key activities we're going to be doing for this business is by collecting the food waste, then producing the products, and then possibly having some community outreach to then educate our communities on home composting practices and hopefully just get the word out to the next generation. And how are we going to help you? What a great question. So our channels of advertisement are going to be through word of mouth in the beginning because we're going to be offering free pickups of this food. Once we have collection sites, we'll be able to basically make it just like trash collection as we have in our cities. But I mean, why wouldn't you want to pick the greener option these days? We're also going to have those education benefits where we're repurposing. And then we're going to also incentivize buying our post products by lowering our prices for them so that they're competitive with like other fuels. And if you were going to buy compost at like Home Depot or any other supermarket stores, we want to be competitive in that way. Who's going to be benefiting from us? So our beneficiaries, people who are investing in us. I mean, let's be real. If we have a less waste to landfill and less greenhouse gases, what is there to lose? We're just making the world a better place, and hopefully the people that are investing will also see that future. And of course, those greener options and being able to just send your food somewhere else and you know it's going to be treated correctly and then turned into other products externally. It's just a no-hassle type deal. Our customers are going to be benefiting from this because we're going to be consumer funded. So basically all the funds and all the revenue that we're going to make is going to be put back into the company. It'll help us or what do they say? Because it's going to cost us money for the pickups and for the lower food or for the lower prices. It'll just help offset that. And possibly in the future, we'll have like a program where they could trade their food scraps for compost day of once we get our cycle going.
So the next part of it is like who will be funding Waste Warriors Incorporated. So our surplus is, as David already previously mentioned, is our profits will be fed directly into expanding the company to other ventures. And primarily we are looking towards expanding into the unsold food market, which we'll get into a little bit more detail later. So then we just have our overview of our cost structure. So we broke it down, like we said, we're based in San Diego, so we utilized, numbers from that area to kind of help calculate average prices. So specifically for composting, it will cost roughly $66,722 to operate with 6 collection bins for the food waste and then 6 composting bins as well, including any extra materials that we find ourselves we may need, such as tools, protection, a warehouse. And then in terms of employment, we did 4 full-time employees, once again based in San Diego, so that would equal about $208,000 per year for the employees. And then for biofuel, this cost is slightly more because we factored in the cost of getting a warehouse into this one. So it's roughly about $500,000 for a small-scale biofuel business. And then once again, we did 4 full-time employees based in San Diego for another $208,000. And then our revenue is, we just have a couple of little percentages. So our biofuel is our main source of revenue since it takes the longest to produce, but it also can make the most money in cases. So it's about 60 to 70%, with compost being in 20 to 30, and then donations or any others, grants, scholarships, or anything we get like that will be another 10 to 20. And as mentioned, we will produce mostly compost, but it will be significantly cheaper than the biofuel. So it will often be given out for free in exchange for that food exchange program that David mentioned.
And then I'm going to be talking about our value. So for our beneficiaries, it's valuable to invest in us because we're going to be utilizing that waste and then lowering our greenhouse gases. Overall, we're going to be producing more jobs for the area as well. Just makes a great business model. And we're going to measure our metrics through the tons of food waste, the amount of homes and businesses that are going to be participating, as well as the revenue from our compost and our biofuel. Lastly, our customers will see the value of putting their food into a guilt-free and sustainable use of their unconsumed food that would otherwise be put into landfills, and that free compost for those donated food scraps. It just sounds like a win-win.
What happens to food that isn't good enough to even make it to consumers is 60% is the amount of food that gets wasted or thrown out in the overall food industry as of 2019. And 43% is the amount of wasted food that was generated solely by the food and beverage industry in 2019. And 32% was the average food recycling rate in 2019, where 292.4 million tons of trash was generated and 94 million tons were recycled. And as of unsold food expansion, is ugly food and wasted food in supermarkets is considered that food was not used for its intended purpose and is usually wasted and thrown away. To help improve this system, our suggestion is that instead of the supermarkets throwing away their food that is wasted, they should either donate or compost them. And to donate or compost the food in the supermarket can collaborate with local food banks or charities like our company and find some way to use the wasted food besides throwing it away.
Last, here's a quote from a guy named Robert Swan. The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it. Thanks.
Thank you all so much.
Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you guys. Any questions from you guys?
Robbie.
Have you thought, or like, can you get a little more detail in like the community engagement and trying to get people to learn about this? Because I feel like that would be the most important part is just getting a lot of people to participate.
We were looking at it sort of like how with the mushroom packaging company they mentioned like workshops and seminars and stuff like that. We were also thinking about implementing those ourselves, and then also with that, like when we do the free pickups, we can kind of include flyers along like mailboxes and all that kind of stuff. Just overall like word of mouth, like as David mentioned, and then just kind of passively hoping it gets throughout the community.
Have you think about where to sell your biofuel products? Is it the quality of biofuel only for example, vehicle, or is it also up to the sustainable aviation fuel SAF? And second, I'm wondering how your price structure when you will give free compost for the company and for the customers.
So for the biofuel, I don't know if I heard the question correctly besides like where we're selling it. For biofuel, you can basically sell it anywhere. The easiest way to sell it is just kind of advertise it like on any open market, like anywhere besides a gas station, obviously, anywhere fuel is basically advertised. So, like we can go to like bigger companies that are like car companies and be like, hey, we have biofuel, like we've heard that you're using a lot of this fuel and stuff like that. This is a way more sustainable option. Would you be interested in working with our company? and we can give you some biofuel maybe at a discounted rate and stuff like that. And it's quickly, easily produced as well. It takes about 48 hours to get 1 barrel, and then in 2023 in loan, I think it was 965,000 barrels of biofuel were produced alone. So it's really easy to get it produced and everything. So if we do work with a massive company, we can get it there. And then, like I said, I don't think I heard the second part of your question about biofuel correctly.
Biofuel, is it only for the vehicle or also up to the sustainable aviation fuel standard?
Right now, we're looking at just doing for vehicles and cars and stuff like that, just because, like I said earlier, most modern engines are able to just quickly work with it. But hopefully, one day we can get it working for aviation and everything.
And then the compost cost structure, we were kind of just throwing out numbers. I mean, it'd be, that'd just be something you figure out. Ideally, we'd just be using the compost as a cheaper, kind of more advertising side of our...
Sort of like a secondary income, secondary advertising element. Like what I said, the biofuel is the 60 to 70% income, so it's the most expensive thing we can make, but like composting is way easier to produce than biofuel, so it's like you gotta give and take.
Yeah, because our food scraps are donated, it just makes more sense to like have a community like bond. Like you donate your food scraps, we'll give you the compost.
Very nice. All right, I have a question from Jake. Excellent presentation. So, what do you think would be the most powerful action we could take to significantly reduce our food waste in general?
I think that just comes with, obviously, like it sounds like a cop-out answer, but just education. Because a lot of people, they misreading the labels of like whatever best by, sell by, use by, like all those labels, what it means. So it's definitely really difficult to kind of understand what those terms mean. I know for myself, it took until my sophomore year of college to realize like what the different terms mean. So I think just educating them, being like, oh, sell by is kind of more so a store thing just for them to rotate their stock. And that's where our unsold food market expansion would come in. And then best by, like that's like your heavy, like just kind of your expiration date. Like if you want the food to taste best, that's when you should eat it by. And then obviously just having clearly labeled expiration days when you should throw out the food or give it to a company like us to compost, recycle, turn to biofuel.
Very good. We don't have time for more questions, so thank you guys so much. Great. I will just wait. All right, so thank you guys once again. I'm gonna invite the last group up to the stage. The Neo Geo. Here you go. Go wild.
Good. All right, hello. We are Team Neo Geo, and our project is repurposing decommissioned energy infrastructure for renewable energy. I'm Ryan.
Chanel.
Yolanda.
Robbie.
Alex.
Kiana.
All right, so just a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about. We're just going to overview the problem, then talk about existing energy reuse cases, our solution, and then how we can involve the community in this process. So the overview.
Great. So we're in the midst of a global transition to renewable energy, changing our energy systems on a massive level. And the challenge is that oftentimes renewable energy resources are concentrated in areas far away from energy or electricity demand, and also far from transmission, and transmission is very expensive to build and also can take a long time in terms of approvals and permitting. So there's a huge opportunity to develop renewable energy projects on decommissioned fossil fuel sites and brownfields, because these lands already have built-in transmission and energy infrastructure, which can cut down on essentially project timelines to be getting clean energy on the grid, and you can also use that land more efficiently, mitigate legacy pollution, and provide a variety of benefits associated with a just transition to clean energy. Next slide. So just to give a little bit more background to the scope and level of problem we're dealing with, this is a global problem, but some of these examples are US focused. So in 2022, abandoned oil and gas wells in the US accounted for 4% of methane emissions from the entire US oil and gas sector. So that's a significant amount. And there's over 3.2 million abandoned oil and gas wells in the US. And this is an estimate because a lot of them are not even recorded. So we believe there's a lot more. And a lot of them are leaking methane, right? So basically the wells can be plugged, but usually once they're plugged, they're not monitored, so they can still leak. And then a lot of them are just left completely unplugged. And 4.6 million people live within half a mile. This is a public health hazard in addition to methane, hydrogen sulfide, benzene, arsenic, other contaminants. And the infrastructure of oil wells can potentially be used for geothermal, which we're going to get into later. So huge opportunity here to repurpose this land. Next slide. And another example of a different energy source that can also be repurposed are coal mines, right? So there's millions of acres of inactive mine land around the globe, or land that's going to be phased out in the coming years from current mining activities. And there's been a lot of studies researching the potential to transition that land to be used into solar, other energy, or storage purposes. And basically, it's just a net positive to repurpose these lands. They are suitable in many cases and can lead to more equitable clean energy transition in terms of providing job opportunities for the local community when we're thinking about a just transition. So in summary, we have local impact of providing clean energy and jobs for communities that are already heavily invested in old fossil energy infrastructure. And then this also has the potential to have kind of national and global scale because we have this problem in all over the world. So with that, we'll get into more specifics.
I'll just talk about repurposing abandoned coal mines for solar storage. Next slide, please. So I'll just quickly run over my two examples for the sake of time. I can go into them further if there are questions later. One of them is pumped storage hydropower. So it's using abandoned coal mines. You fill them with water, and you can create with a river nearby, you can create a hydropower system, and you pair that with large solar arrays, and you can balance out the intermittentness of solar production. Next slide, please. You can also use floating solar farms. Again, you fill in a coal mine with water. That water is really gross, probably won't be used for anything else. You can build frames for solar and put it on, and it helps with water scarcity because it lowers surface evaporation, and people are more likely to want it because it's not in their backyard and already on this thing that's kind of disgusting. So, next slide. Future directions for solar. So, kind of combining the surface on solar on water with glaciers. Yesterday we went to a glacier. There was a giant lagoon in front of it, and as Steinen said, that kind of accelerates the melting process of the glacier. So I was thinking if you put solar panels on top of the lagoon, the water doesn't heat up as much, and you're kind of harnessing that heat energy from the sun, slowing down the rate of melting, and you're also kind of harnessing that energy. Obviously there are a lot of challenges. It can impede glacial growth or movement as glaciers are fluid. There is often a lack of sunshine near glaciers, lack of transmission capabilities, and the harsh environment just makes everything harder and requires more maintenance.
So I want to highlight two case studies where they repurposed oil and gas wells for hydropower and storage. The first one is Sage Geosystems. It's the test site is at an abandoned gas site in South Texas where they're creating a 3 megawatt geopressure geothermal system. It's called the Huff and Puff system. So they pump water into underground fractures, kind of like oil and gas fracturing, but without the negative things that come with that. So the efficiency of the pressure is around 70%, and it can also harvest the hot water and heat energy at around 200% efficiency. And it can also be used for geothermal baseload, and they hope, well, it shows promise that it's able to store energy for short and long term, and then they hope in the future that it can be used with renewable sources to provide baseload and dispatchable energy. Another one is at University of Illinois' UC campus, where they are establishing geothermal energy storage in a mature oil and gas well. researchers selected this area because it is a low temperature basin, but it has porous mineral rock, which offers good thermal conductivity. So during the testing, a 50 degrees Celsius fluid was injected into the well, which was already there because it was a previous oil well. They injected it into the well to test the site's thermal storage capacity, and the results were 82% heat storage efficiency. The electricity production cost was around 14 cents per kilowatt hour, and this can be used to potentially heat and cool the agricultural facilities at the University of Illinois campuses. It's currently still being evaluated if it's economically feasible and matches the energy needs for that area.
All right, so now we're going to get moving towards our solution. But first we need to know why we're doing this. So we're doing this because there are thousands of abandoned energy generation facilities across the US, across the globe, that are leaking, that are unattractive, that can be repurposed to do better things. And we're going to do that by installing new generation facilities on top of those. So we're going to use the ability of the old generation facilities. We're going to use that existing infrastructure to create new infrastructure that may not be as efficient, but theoretically with the added ease of the infrastructure already being there, we can still make a profit. And we're going to do this. Our company is a developer, so we're going to be the ones building these systems, identifying what systems would be best where, and then implementing those, and then selling the power to a power purchase agreement company. All right, so along the way, we're going to impact many sustainable development goals. The main ones are 7, 9, and 13 of affordable and clean energy, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, and then climate action. And then some of our ideas involve water too, so whenever we're using water, we're going to make sure that we're upholding climate goal 6, which is clean water and sanitation. So this kind of technology, this idea is not without its challenges, but it's also not without its possibilities. So challenges, it's hard to build around something that already exists. We can't just go anywhere we want to go with this. We have to go somewhere that's already abandoned. And with that, there's going to be environmental hazards. There's going to be things coming out of the ground if we're using a well, for instance. There's going to be abandoned coal mines that might be kind of having those harmful substances closer to the surface that we need to be aware of and able to mitigate. And then also main resource depletion. So if we're using an energy generation site and it's abandoned, it's likely because it wasn't profitable anymore. So if there was a geothermal well or an oil well, it's likely that they've already extracted the feasible amount of resource from that area, so we're not going to be able to do that necessarily. But like I said, this is also not without a lot of possibilities. So this is going to be wonderful for local job creation because we're going to be building things in the community that are going to need to be maintained and upkept. We can use existing expensive infrastructure that's already been built. So a lot of these places will have transmission lines already built for us, so we don't have to do that. Maybe even wells, if we're going to reuse those, we don't have to do that, and that's all very expensive infrastructure. And then we're also going to have access to energy sources. So though they might not be as abundant as they once were, we still have access to energy. This is a bit of our business model canvas, but we're going to dive into this a little deeper here. So key activities for our company, we're going to be installing renewable energy generation on old energy generation sites. To do this, we're going to need some resources. We're going to need the equipment to do it. Most of that equipment is going to be already well implemented and known how it works. So we just have to figure out how to take that equipment and implement it in our case. But we're going to need a lot of permitting and interconnection things to make sure that everything we're doing is fluid with what already exists. And we're also going to need the workers. We're going to need the people to build this, to design this, to upkeep all of these things. Shareholders, we're going to have quite a few, but the main ones here are utilities, right? We're selling power through power purchase agreements to independent power producers who then are selling their power. We're going to need to work with the landowners to make sure that everything we're doing is okay with them, and then this is desirable for them as well. And then power companies. And then channels, we're going to be doing this by directly communicating with power companies and landowners, and then having community outreach. So we need to make sure that that direct communication line is open, that everyone wants what we're giving, and then making sure that the community is also fully aware of what's going on and on board with it.
So I'm going to be talking about the finance of the project. So we will be getting funding for this project from both the Inflation Reduction Act and the Department of Energy. The IRA Act gives loans to the projects that retool or reuse old energy infrastructure. And then the Department of Energy has a Wells of Opportunity program, which supports installing geothermal in previous areas where there was like oil mining. And then we will be getting a lease from the landowners on this land for a certain time periods, for like example 20 years to like get energy from solar, geothermal on this land. And this project has many benefits. It creates local job creation. Another benefit is grid resiliency by providing a low cost energy. And shareholders and financiers would also benefit from the profit that this energy is making for them when you're selling the energy back to the grid. And then any surplus money will be invested into expansion, such as new places to install solar and geothermal. Our revenue will be made by a power purchase agreement, which basically says that we're going to sell the electricity back to the grid at a fixed rate for a certain time period. And then the agreement, and then the project development has various costs, such as labor and equipment costs. For example, installing a heat pump will be one of the costs. Also paying for engineers and construction workers is another cost of the project. And the project development has a lot of benefits, it has a lot of value. For one thing, it has a low environmental impact. For another thing, it's revitalizing land which wouldn't really be useful otherwise. So it's a really efficient way to use land.
As a private project developer, we will also focus on people, and we will create this community engagement strategy as part of the corporate sustainability policy and strategy. We try to rejuvenate community initiative, and we will do 4 things. Firstly, involving community group or cooperative in wastewater processing. So both geothermal plants and coal plants produce toxic wastewater. As mentioned by Kiana in her slides, the environmental hazard and public health hazard is one of the issues that need to be resolved. And this is the slide, the illustration make this provable to be doable to implement it. And second, we will try to revitalize the community group or the community center or the cooperative to become an innovation hub where the brine of the geothermal, it can consist of valuable critical minerals, and these critical minerals is really a hot topic now for US government, as these silica, lithium, strontium, rare earth elements, they are all can be produced to something valuable and engaging the community in the process. Next, we will also conduct upscaling training session for local community, for the people surrounding the project, on these following sectors which is relevant to supply the employment for the project. That's it, thank you.
Are there any questions?
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused on your implementation of Sustainable Development Goal number 6, because from my understanding, it's more so relating to like giving communities clean drinking water and proper sanitation efforts such as hand washing and everything like that. So I'm just confused on how you plan on implementing that into it, because from my understanding of your project, it's not really related towards clean drinking water and sanitation efforts.
Absolutely. It's not directly related, but we're making sure that we're upholding the clean water that already exists. So yes, we're not producing any water, but just because we're not producing the clean water doesn't mean we can't care for the water that we are using. So we're going to take the water that we're using, whether it's in a pumped storage system for coal mines or it's in a geothermal system in an old oil well. Those are both very toxic environments, so we're going to make sure that those waters don't dampen that goal.
It's also like making sure that these like things like methane and other things from these abandoned sites are not leaking into like water systems, which is like a big issue because no one cares about it because it's not making money anymore, so no one goes to check on it, and a lot of times these things can leak into the groundwater and obviously create huge issues.
Yeah. Any other questions from you guys? All right, I have a question. So, what is your like as a company developers? What is your like desired scale of things? And is there a particular location or a project that you would like to start with? It's like what would be your...
So the main kind of point of our company, I think, is to be very adaptable to the environment. So there's not one type of project, there's not one type of system that we're looking to implement. Rather, we're looking to see what exists and how we can take advantage of that. So if we have a coal mine that's uniquely situated next to a river, we're going to identify that and be able to take advantage of that to whatever capacity available. So it's not necessarily that we're looking to implement a cookie cutter, cut and dry solution, but rather find the solution that works best for the specific area.
Can I add to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think because the kind of projects we're developing are a little bit more innovative and potentially complicated, not all developers are willing to take on these kinds of projects because in the pre-development process there might be more permitting and environmental impact assessments required. And so I think, you know, there's been a lot of studies already identifying sites that are old infrastructure that are suitable to be developed, and there's a lot of government funding and research going to it. So I think partnering with those other organizations and government stakeholders that are already sort of doing that research and essentially making ourselves available as a developer willing to take on and have the expertise in those sorts of projects. But yeah, there definitely are, because of the different, whether it's mines or wells, different regional hubs where you have a lot of those infrastructure. So we'd probably like start in areas where there's more concentrated of abandoned infrastructure.
Okay.
So
that's what I was thinking. And another question for me is like, is the idea to like bring in more like contractors that would work for you rather than having them like as full employees?
Like subcontract?
Yeah.
Subcontracts. Yeah, I mean, of course, I think it's always good to outsource what you don't really know, especially depending on like the scale, how fast we scale.
Exactly.
So I think that we'll probably work with like other regional experts for things that we might not know
exactly already.
And especially in West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania, that kind of area of the U.S. that was very big in, you know, we call it coal country. So they know their mines in and out, and they know all the problems with it. So if we bring them in and their expertise and their workers, you know, everything's going to go smoother and potentially safer for the environment.
I like it. Okay, I have a question from Jake, or few, I think. Really good presentation and area of interest. I have strong interest, Jacob, not me, in the reuse of coal mines for the heat production. What do you believe is the largest challenge you will face in that area specifically?
For geothermal heat production?
Yes, I have strong interest in the reuse of coal mines for the heat production. Yeah.
So I think from what I saw, it was like that's the location, first of all, because especially in the United States, there's not a lot of areas that are good for geothermal.
Yeah.
So like for my example, which was the Sage geosystems, they were using mechanical energy, like from the pressure from the wells. So they were using that, so it was like also they were harnessing the heat. So I think that location will be a large issue. Also, the temperature of the wells are not as hot.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say. Like the main resource that's there isn't the resource that we're extracting. So just by nature of economics, someone would have already taken the heat out if the heat was the most profitable thing there.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to compete with like less ideal circumstances when we're doing these. But like I said earlier, like hopefully the existing infrastructure that's already there will help offset those costs of being less efficient.
Yeah, exactly.
As well as the land should be pretty cheap because it's not very valuable.
Yeah. And he had then another question, which is basically the same as mine, but maybe he is referring it to the heat production related question. Do you have a key location you would like to start at? is kind of what I was asking as well.
I mean, the first thing that comes to my mind is that East Coast, like West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I drive through there all the time on my way to school, and you see all these signs for black lung or, you know, mining-related diseases. So if there's something we could do to utilize that and kind of come in and maybe mitigate the effects of that pollution, that would be a great place to start.
Exactly.
I think anywhere where there's a lot of, like, also in Texas, where there's so many abandoned oil and gas sites where it's dried up.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly.
her map. Like, there's, what did we say, 2.3 million or
3.2, but they think the number is actually low because they're not tracking it well. So
Yeah.
there's just a ton of opportunity, and the wells of opportunity DOE funding that Alex mentioned, I mean, it's funded projects all over the U.S.
Yeah.
So I think it's really sort of a question of just starting in, you know, 1 or 2 locations and just scaling up from there, because there's actually so much opportunity to take on projects in many regions. So
awesome. Any questions from you guys? All good. All right, thank you so much. Awesome. How freaking amazing.
And now Mitchell solo presents.
All right, so thank you guys. If you can sit down. First of all, thank you all for these amazing presentations. You did great. I'm just very happy that I got to spend this week with you guys and see you like use every opportunity to work on your capstones. I know that you didn't really get a lot of like official time to work on it, but you really did, and I'm happy to see the outcome of it. It was really good. And I feel like always with these capstone projects, it's so amazing to see how like a small group of people with short amount of time can actually bring to the table. So that's pretty amazing. And you guys were amazing at presenting it as well. So thank you for that. I think we can just say bye to the online viewers and yeah, thanks for joining. If somebody joined, yeah, I mean Jacob is there, so. But yeah,
Look at our
bye.
stats, guys. 9 views. We got 9 views.
Oh yeah.
That's actually, you know, quite a lot. But we're offline, so thank you guys.